The rhythmic thrum of the Neo-Arcadian energy shields was Kaelen Thorne's lullaby, a constant, low-frequency hum that vibrated through the reinforced floor of the Kaiju Defense Force's Central Operations Hub. It was meant to be a comfort, a reassurance of humanity's resilience against the colossal elemental creatures that stalked the deep. But to Kaelen, it was a constant reminder of the fragile peace, built on fear and defiance, not understanding. He sat hunched over his console, fingers flying across holographic interfaces, a blur of practiced efficiency. Lines of complex data streamed before him, sonar pings, bathymetric maps, etheric flux readings from the deep ocean rifts. His specialty was sensor management and containment protocols, the cold, hard logic of data. It was a role he excelled at, a bastion of control in a world that had once ripped control from his grasp. Yet, beneath the detached veneer of a highly competent technician, a storm of suppressed emotion raged. The ghosts of a coastal research settlement, shattered and drowned, haunted his peripheral vision. Thorne, status on Sector Gamma 7, barked a voice from across the ops floor, Major Lena Hansen, a woman carved from granite, whose face held the permanent scowl of perpetual vigilance. She epitomized the KDF's ethos, unwavering strength, unyielding resolve. All clear, Major, Kaelen responded, his voice flat, devoid of the weary inflection he felt internally. Minor seismic activity, deep trench, consistent with subplate shifts. No anomalous etheric signatures detected. Good. Keep it tight. We had a Category 2 breach south of Oceania yesterday. Don't want to repeat. Hansen's eyes, sharp and unforgiving, swept over the vast, multi-tiered ops center, a cavernous space bathed in the cool blue glow of 100 screens. Kaelen merely nodded, his gaze already drifting back to his own station. He preferred the silent language of data to the gruff exchanges of command. His fingers danced, calibrating a deep-sea resonator array, pushing its sensitivity to its absolute limits. He wasn't just looking for kaiju, he was listening. He'd always listened, even before the catastrophic event that had orphaned him. A whisper, a hum, a resonance that others dismissed as background noise. He'd learned to suppress it, that innate, inconvenient sensitivity to the swirling energies of the world, a forgotten inheritance he distrusted. Then a flicker. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the deep-sea sensor net, far beyond known kaiju hunting grounds, approaching Neo-Arcadia from an uncharted rift in the Mariana Trench. It wasn't just the depth or the speed that was unusual, it was the quality of the signal. Kaelen leaned closer, overriding the system's default filters. Standard protocol was to flag anything over 1.5 petajoules of etheric output. This was far below that threshold, a mere ripple, but it pulsed with an odd, discordant harmony. Like an orchestra tuning, but one of the instruments was subtly, uniquely off-key. "Sir," Kaelen said, his voice sharper this time, cutting through the general hum of the ops floor. Detecting an anomalous signature, deep sea net, approximately 1,200 clicks due east. Originating from Trench Delta 9. Major Hansen strode over, her boots thudding against the metal floor. "Anomalous how, Thorne? Give me specifics." "Category. Estimated size. Etheric classification." Kaelen zoomed in on the sonar return. A faint blip, growing. "Too early for full classification, Major. Size estimate, large. Potentially alpha class, but the etheric signature, it's unstable. Highly mutable. Fluctuating between low-frequency hums and sudden, high-intensity spikes. It's unlike anything I've logged." He pulled up a comparison graph, overlaying the new signal against known Alpha Kaiju signatures, the steady, powerful thrum of a Terra Titan, the jagged, chaotic spikes of a Tempest Lurker. The new signature defied categorization. It seemed to shift, almost as if it were trying to communicate or perhaps struggling internally. "No, Thorne," he chastised himself mentally. "Don't anthropomorphize. It's just data. Fluctuations. Noise." Yet, the thought persisted, a nagging tendril of an old, forbidden intuition. Hansen scowled, her eyes narrowing. "Unstable? That's not good. Unpredictable targets are the worst. Log it as unclassified alpha, High priority. Initiate long-range defensive protocols. Prepare for shield fortification. She turned to another technician. Squad Beta, ready your dispersal charges. Target parameters will be pushed in T-10 minutes. Kaelen felt a familiar clench in his stomach. Dispersal charges. The standard KDF response, concussive blasts designed to disorient and drive off, sometimes fatally wound. A crude, violent answer to a nuanced problem. He watched the new signature intensify on his screen, the discordant hum growing louder, painting a vivid picture of a colossal being in distress, not malice. He glanced at the trajectory. It was heading straight for Neo Arcadia. Major, Kaelen ventured, the energy signature, it's not aggressive. It's more erratic. Almost like pain or extreme agitation. The spikes aren't consistent with typical predatory or territorial displays. They're sporadic, almost like a cry. Hansen whirled around, her face a mask of irritation. Thorne, are you suggesting we send it a get-well-soon card? Kaiju are threats. Period. Erratic makes it more dangerous, not less. We follow protocol. Containment, then deterrence. If it penetrates the outer shield, eradication. Kaelen bit back a retort. He knew the futility of arguing with Hansen. Her world was black and white, survival or destruction. His was shades of gray, illuminated by the lingering echo of his research scientist parents' belief in understanding over elimination. Understood, Major, he replied, forcing the words out. He returned to his screen, but instead of pushing dispersal charge parameters, he delved deeper into the raw data. There had to be something. A pattern within the chaos. He began running complex Fourier transforms, spectral analyses, trying to isolate individual frequencies within the Kaiju's etheric field. Hours blurred. The ops center remained a hive of activity, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Kaelen, however, was lost in a different world, a labyrinth of oscillating energies, molecular resonance, and quantum fluctuations. He was looking for the heart of the Kaiju's distress, a pathway into its internal mechanisms, however remote. His screens pulsed with intricate diagrams. He noticed subtle patterns, almost like biological markers, embedded within the chaotic etheric spikes. A rhythm that suggested complex neural activity, not just brute energy output. It was too refined, too specific to be random. It was a language. He remembered his father's lectures, late at night, in the old research settlement. Kaelen, everything speaks. The ocean, the wind, even the smallest mollusk. You just have to learn to listen to the right frequency. His father, who had believed in etheric symbiosis, in understanding the kaiju before. A shudder ran through Kaelen. The image of the towering Leviathan, its eyes glowing with what seemed like unholy agony, as it obliterated everything he held dear, flashed in his mind. It wasn't malice, Dad. It was pain. He'd carried that silent conviction, that heavy burden, ever since. It was why he distrusted his own empathic gifts, why he buried them under layers of cold logic. But now, this new kaiju, its resonance so eerily reminiscent of that devastating day, pulled at those buried instincts. I found it, Kaelen murmured, mostly to himself, a dry whisper in the vast, noisy room. He'd isolated a persistent, low-frequency hum, almost like a biological signature, buried beneath the erratic spikes. It was a rhythmic pulse, consistent, resilient. If the chaotic spikes were a scream, this was a heartbeat. He cross-referenced the frequency with a restricted database, Dr. Aris Granger's archived research, the legendary pioneer of Aetherial Symbiosis. Access to this database was tightly controlled, reserved for theoretical biologists, not KDF technicians. Kaelen had spent years finding the backdoor. The database coughed up a single match, etheric resonator pattern, subject, Theronix gigas, ancient designation, suspected alpha class. Notes, unique neural etheric feedback loop. Highly sensitive to environmental disruption. Potential for rapid etheric destabilization under duress. Hypothesis, neural network susceptible to targeted etheric modulation. Theronix gigas. The name sent a jolt through him. This wasn't just any kaiju. It was a legend, whispered about in hushed tones even among the research community. A creature of immense power and, according to Granger's fragmented notes, profound, almost poetic sensitivity. He looked back at the live feed. The kaiju was now 800 clicks out. The shield projections for Neo-Arcadia pulsed on the main screen, a vibrant blue dome. Major Hansen was yelling orders, deploying reconnaissance drones. Kaelen realized the KDF's blunt force approach wouldn't just be ineffective, it could be catastrophic. If Granger's notes were accurate, etheric destabilization under duress meant their dispersal charges, their sonar cannons, their energy weapons would only escalate the creature's pain, triggering a feedback loop that could unleash unimaginable destructive power. He had to do something. He pulled up Granger's file, searching for targeted etheric modulation. The term resonated with something deep within him, a half-forgotten language of energy and connection. As he scrolled, a shadow fell over his console. He looked up, expecting Major Hansen, ready for another reprimand. Instead, an old man stood there, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, framed by a wispy white beard and keen, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Professor Alistair Finch. Kaelen stiffened. Finch was a ghost, a reclusive academic, one of the last living minds who'd worked alongside Aris Granger, a master of Aetherial Symbiosis, rumored to exist only in the dusty archives of forgotten universities. What was he doing here? Finch's gaze swept across Kaelen's screen, settling on the glowing frequency patterns and the open Granger file. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Etheric resonator pattern, Theronix gigas, Finch murmured, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly clear for his age. He pointed a gnarled finger at the specific frequency Kaelen had isolated. A heartbeat, isn't it, young man? Buried deep beneath the pain. He looked at Kaelen, his eyes piercing. Most technicians only see the scream. You hear the melody. Kaelen felt a prickle of unease, a strange mix of recognition and alarm. He tried so hard to hide that part of himself. Finch ignored his discomfort. Tell me, Mr. Thorne, do you truly believe the KDF's deterrence will work on Aetherinix? Or will it merely amplify its agony into an uncontrolled catastrophe? He paused, his gaze fixed on the approaching kaiju's trajectory. Because if you understand Granger's work, you'll know that creature isn't coming to destroy us out of malice. It's coming because it's in terrible pain and it's seeking something. And I think, Finch leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a near whisper, you might be the only one here who can figure out what that something is. The kaiju's etheric signature pulsed on the screen, growing brighter, closer. The entire ops floor was alive with a new kind of tension, a pre-battle hum. But Kaelen only heard the low, insistent melody of the Theronix gigas and the quiet challenge in Professor Finch's voice. He was being called to listen, truly listen, for the first time in years. And in that moment, for all his logical mind's protestations, Kaelen knew he couldn't refuse. The ghosts of his past demanded it. The future of Neo-Arcadia depended on it. Kaelen had expected to be debriefed, maybe even reprimanded, for his insubordination the previous shift. Instead, a terse message had redirected him from the KDF's sterile sensor bays to the upper levels of Neo-Arcadia, to a sector rarely accessed by personnel of his clearance, the private research archives, home to Professor Alistair Finch. The journey upward was a stark transition from the functional grit of the lower city. Gleaming chrome gave way to polished darkwood and muted lighting. The air, usually thick with ozone and recycled oxygen, here carried the faint scent of aged paper and something vaguely herbal. He found Finch's study nestled behind a heavy, unadorned door. Professor Finch was precisely as Kaelen remembered from the old hololectures, a man carved from granite and stubborn resolve, now weathered by time and a palpable weariness. His silver hair, once meticulously combed, now fell in unruly strands around a face etched with deep lines. He sat behind a desk piled high with ancient data slates and thick, bound volumes, a glowing etheric diagram shimmering above a cracked monitor. Thorne, Finch's voice was a gravelly rasp, come in. Close the door. Kaelen obeyed, feeling the subtle click of the heavy door behind him. The room felt like a sanctuary, yet also a cage. You have an interesting record, technician, Finch began. Not looking up from a parchment scroll, he was examining under a magnifying lens. High aptitude scores, exemplary technical skills. And a disturbing pattern of insubordination. Kaelen bristled, but held his tongue. He knew what Finch was referring to, his refusal to follow protocols that he deemed unnecessarily aggressive, his subtle manipulations of sensor readings to give Kaijoi more space, more time. Your intuition regarding the new Alpha signature, Finch continued, finally raising his gaze, his eyes a startlingly bright blue against his aged face. It aligns with certain anomalies we've been tracking. He gestured to the shimmering diagram, which depicted complex, interlocking wave patterns, kaiju etheric signatures. One stood out, a chaotic, fiercely beautiful bloom of violet and crimson, oscillating with an intensity Kaelen had never witnessed. This was the Alpha. The resonance, Kaelen ventured, it felt different. Not just power, but a kind of fractured pain. He instantly regretted the word pain, falling back on his usual scientific lexicon. A high-frequency empathic response, perhaps, if one were to speculate. Finch grunted, a sound that could have been approval or derision. Speculation is for philosophers, Thorne. We deal in data. But you sensed something beyond the algorithms, didn't you? Something I suspected, but couldn't quantify. He leaned back, his gaze piercing. Tell me about the settlement attack. Your parents. Kaelen's carefully constructed walls slammed shut. He hadn't spoken about that day to anyone in years. It's irrelevant, Professor. I was a child. My memories are unreliable. Unreliable or too painful to face? Finch pressed, his voice softening ever so slightly. The Titan Eradication Initiative labeled it an unprovoked attack. I remember the reports. But I also remember Dr. Aris Granger's theories and your parents' research into bioluminescent symbiotic algae. They were close to something. You were close to something. And now this? He pointed to the Alpha's furious etheric signature. The most volatile Alpha we've seen in decades. And you, Thorne, detected its distress before anyone else. The implication hung in the air. Kaelen had a connection. A connection he deeply mistrusted. Just then, a chime echoed through the study. Finch nodded towards the door. Speak of the devil. Or, in this case, the whirlwind. Come in, Dr. Vance. The door hissed open, and a figure burst into the room, seemingly radiating kinetic energy. Dr. Alara Vance was a vibrant splash of color against the subdued backdrop. Her lab coat was splattered with what Kaelen suspected was bioluminescent algae culture. Her wild auburn hair was escaping its bun in defiant curls, and her spectacles were perched precariously on the tip of her nose. Her eyes, a startling emerald green, burned with an almost manic intensity. Professor. Kaelen. I assume you've told him about the breach in the containment field's etheric dampeners? The spectral readings from 4B indicate a meltdown of the standard calming agents. She didn't wait for an answer, striding straight to Finch's monitor, her fingers flying across the holographic interface, pulling up more data. The Alpha isn't just reacting to us, it's reacting to something else. Something systemic. Kaelen felt an immediate, uncomfortable clash. Vance was a force of nature, all instinct and explosive intellect. His own measured logic felt clumsy in comparison. Dr. Vance, the dampeners were calibrated for known Alpha signatures. This one is anomalous. We need to analyze its unique etheric frequency and, if possible, its emotional state. The last phrase felt strange on his tongue, a concession to the empathic stirrings he usually suppressed. Vance spun around, her face alight. Emotional state. Exactly. Kaelen, you get it. These aren't just biological constructs, they're expressions of pure, raw consciousness. Their rampages aren't malice, they're screams. Did you see the neural complexity scans from the latest deep-sea drone? The prefrontal cortex equivalent is more intricate than any species on Earth, human included. She jabbed a finger at Kaelen, then at the monitor. We need to communicate with it, not sedate it into oblivion. Finch, watching the exchange with a flicker of amusement in his tired eyes, interjected. Which is precisely why you two are here. Vance, Kaelen, your divergent approaches, paradoxically, make you the ideal team. Kaelen's precision and uncanny empathy, Vance's encyclopedic knowledge of kaiju biology, and her enthusiasm. He paused. The KDF, naturally, has other ideas. As if on cue, a harsh, clipped voice resonated from the comm panel on Finch's desk. Professor Finch, Dr. Vance. Report to command immediately. Director Vane requires an update on the Alpha's containment status. It was Director Richter Vane's voice, a chilling baritone that always carried an undercurrent of barely suppressed impatience. Vance scoffed, rolling her eyes. Great. Another session of Let's Blow Up the Beautiful, Misunderstood Creature with Vane. Kaelen felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He knew Vane. Knew his reputation for ruthlessness, his unwavering belief in humanity's dominion. Vane was the embodiment of everything Kaelen feared about the KDF's approach. They arrived at the command center, a cavernous chamber buzzing with activity. Holographic displays projected tactical maps, energy shield integrity readouts, and the Alpha's furious etheric pulse, a pulsing red icon inching closer to Neo-Arcadia's outer barrier. Director Vane stood at the central console, his back ramrod straight, his silver uniform impeccable. He was a man forged in the crucible of kaiju war, his every movement radiating coiled power. Professor. Dr. Vance. Technician Thorne. Vane greeted them, his gaze sweeping over Kaelen with an unsettling intensity. The Alpha, designation Leviathan, continues to breach our perimeter protocols. Conventional sonic dampeners and bioneutralizing agents are proving ineffective. Its etheric output is destabilizing local energy grids. Director, Vance interjected immediately, her voice sharp despite Finch's warning glance. Leviathan isn't breaching protocols, it's reacting to immense stress. We believe its internal etheric regulators are critically overcharged, possibly due to a unique interaction with the deep-sea geothermic vents. Attempting to suppress it further with brute force will only escalate its distress and provoke a catastrophic retaliatory discharge. Vane turned slowly, his expression impassive. Dr. Vance, your theories, while imaginative, are not tactical solutions. We have a city of 20 million at risk. My priority is protection. We've authorized a phased deployment of the new arc plasma cannons. Level 3 targeting protocols are being initiated. Kaelen's blood ran cold. Arc plasma cannons were a last resort, designed to inflict maximum damage. Not to contain, but to eradicate. He remembered the chilling effectiveness of those weapons in field exercises, the way they ripped through kaiju hide, often leaving behind a lingering, unstable etheric residue. It was messy, brutal, and often triggered further, more violent kaiju responses. Director, with all due respect, Kaelen stepped forward, surprising even himself with his boldness. The Alpha's signature indicates a heightened sensitivity to external energy influxes. Firing arc plasma cannons would be akin to striking a raw nerve with a lightning bolt. It would likely trigger an uncontrolled etheric cascade, potentially breaching the city's primary shields. Vane's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something cold and dangerous appearing in their depths. Technician Thorne, your opinion is noted. However, tactical decisions are made by those trained for them. My data indicates a direct hit to the primary neural cluster will incapacitate Leviathan, preventing further destruction. He turned back to the tactical map, gesturing to a glowing red target area on the Alpha's projection. Incapacitate, Director? Or enrage beyond reason? Vance shot back, her voice shaking with barely suppressed fury. Professor Finch, tell him. This creature is a living ecosystem, not a rogue warship. Finch stepped forward, his aged voice carrying unexpected weight. Richter, Aris Granger always theorized that extreme, focused etheric discharge could rupture the delicate symbiotic balance within a kaiju's biosystem. It could create a kind of feedback loop, turning its own power against it. Leviathan's unique signature suggests it's particularly susceptible to this. We need to analyze its internal etheric flow, develop a targeted calming resonance, something more precise than blunt force. Vane considered them for a long, tense moment. The hum of the arc plasma cannons powering up was almost audible through the comms. How long will your analysis take, Professor? How long do you expect Neo-Arcadia to wait for a lullaby? We need more data, Director, Kaelen insisted. High-resolution sonar, deep-spectrum etheric scans. We need to understand why it's in such distress. My readings from earlier, the fractured resonance, it indicated a response, not an initiation. Vane's lips thinned. Technician, you are dismissed. Dr. Vance, Professor, you have 12 hours. If you haven't presented a viable, non-destructive containment method by then, the arc plasma cannons will be authorized for full engagement. 12 hours, and not a minute more. Understood. The dismissal was final. Kaelen felt a surge of cold dread. 12 hours. It was barely enough time to verify the existing data, let alone devise a revolutionary calming spell for an unknown Alpha Kaiju. He looked at Vance, her face pale but determined, and then at Finch, who seemed to carry the weight of decades of past failures. As they walked away from command, Vance hissed, 12 hours. He might as well have given us 12 minutes. He wants to use those cannons, Kaelen. He's itching to prove that his way is the only way. He believes he's protecting humanity, Kaelen muttered, trying to reconcile Vane's cold pragmatism with his own desperate desire for a different path. Protection through annihilation, Vance retorted. There has to be another way. We have to find it. Fast. She paused, turning to Kaelen, her emerald eyes blazing. Your empathic readings. Tell me more about this fractured pain. Did you get a sense of what caused it? A specific trigger. Kaelen closed his eyes, forcing himself to recall the raw, unadulterated sensation from the sensor bay. It had been like listening to a symphony being torn apart, piece by agonizing piece. Not just pain, but an echo of violation. He saw a flash of his childhood home, the shimmering research facility, before the Titan tore it apart. Was Leviathan being provoked in a similar way? It was deep, Kaelen finally said, his voice barely a whisper. Like something vital was being stripped away. Not external damage, but an internal corruption. As if its very essence was being disrupted, not by a natural force, but deliberately. Vance's eyes widened. Finch, who had been listening intently, let out a slow, troubled breath. Deliberately, he repeated, the word hanging heavy in the air. If that's true, Richter's cannons won't just be a mistake, Kaelen. They'll be a cover-up. The implication hit Kaelen with the force of a physical blow. A deliberate disruption. Someone was hurting Leviathan. And Vane's aggressive containment orders weren't just about protecting Neo Arcadia, they were about silencing the evidence. The Alpha Kaiju wasn't just a threat, it was a victim being pushed to its breaking point. And Kaelen, with his suppressed empathy, might be the only one who truly understood its silent scream. The thought ignited a cold fury he rarely allowed himself to feel. He had 12 hours to prove it and to unmask the true orchestrator of Leviathan's agony. 12 hours to save not just a city, but a creature and maybe, just maybe, prevent history from repeating itself. The acrid tang of ozone and spent energy shield residue still clung to the air of Neo Arcadia's outer ring, a grim reminder of Zephyrion's last close pass. Kaelen Thorne walked through the hushed corridors of Sector Beta, the sterile chrome and dimmed emergency lighting a stark contrast to the vivid, terrifying images seared into his memory. The screams, the shattering glass, the sickening lurch of the earth, echoes of his childhood trauma, amplified by the recent near-miss. Logic dictated Zephyrien was merely reacting to etheric fluctuations, its rampage a territorial display or a cry for help. His technician's mind could parse the data, analyze the resonance patterns, but his gut churned with something far less rational, a primal fear interwoven with a profound, almost desperate empathy. Dr. Vance's impassioned pleas for understanding, her unwavering belief in kaiju sentience, had chipped away at his carefully constructed emotional walls. He saw in her eyes a reflection of his own buried grief, a shared longing to prevent more loss. The old path of eradication, the one etched in Director Vane's cold resolve, felt increasingly wrong. He found Professor Finch in the secluded, dust-mote-filled chambers beneath the main biolabs, a space that felt more like an ancient library than a cutting-edge research facility. The air here smelled of aged paper, ozone, and something faintly herbal, perhaps a forgotten botanical experiment. Finch, hunched over a flickering holographic display of kaiju neural pathways, looked up, his silver brows furrowed. Kaelen, he grunted, his gaze piercing. Vance tells me you've had a change of heart. Or perhaps a resurgence of it. Kaelen nodded, exhaling slowly. I saw what Zephyrion did. What it nearly did. And I felt something more than just its destructive power. Fear. Confusion. I don't understand it, Professor, but I can't ignore it anymore. The KDF's methods, they only seem to escalate the problem. Finch leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips, a rare sight. Good. Aris always said that true understanding begins where logic falters. You have an affinity, Kaelen. A rare sensitivity to etheric fields that Aris herself possessed and few others since. It's a gift, not a burden, if you learn to wield it. He gestured to a complex diagram on the holoscreen. Aetherial Symbiosis isn't about brute force, Kaelen. It's about listening. About understanding a kaiju's etheric signature at a molecular level, then gently guiding its own energetic flow. Aris called it whispering on the wind of their consciousness. It requires an almost impossible blend of scientific precision and pure, unadulterated empathy. Empathy, Kaelen repeated, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. He had suppressed it for so long. Indeed, to soothe a raging titan, you must first feel its rage, then offer solace. To guide it, you must understand its direction. And to do that, you must be willing to open yourself to its raw, untamed essence. Finch's eyes held a flicker of melancholy. It's why so few ever mastered it. And why Aris? Well, her fate is a tale for another time. He cleared his throat. But we don't have time for leisurely tales. Zephyrion's activity is erratic and Vane is tightening his leash. Just then, Dr. Alara Vance burst into the chamber, her lab coat askew, a wild gleam in her emerald eyes. Professor Kaelen, I've been tracking anomalous etheric surges. Not Zephyrion directly, but a smaller resonance, localized within Sector Gamma. A contained kaiju, a brine serpent, has gone into distress. Its etheric signature is spiking erratically. Conventional calming protocols are failing. Finch exchanged a look with Kaelen. Excellent. An opportune trial. The KDF keeps a handful of juvenile kaiju for observation in their research annexes. This particular brine serpent, Serpens minores, is a relatively low-threat species, but its current agitation could compromise containment. Ideal for a first attempt. Vance's excitement was palpable. I've cross-referenced its bioetheric maps. We know its primary neural clusters, its chemosensory organs, its emotional centers. If we can project a calming frequency into its specific etheric pathways, we might stabilize it. Kaelen felt a surge of apprehension, mixed with a strange determination. This was it. No more data analysis from a distance. He would have to face a kaiju, raw empathy on display. They quickly moved to a secure, reinforced containment facility in Sector Gamma. The air grew heavy, charged with a subtle, electric hum. Through a thick viewport, Kaelen saw Serpens minores, a creature resembling a massive, iridescent eel, coiled within a vast, flooded tank. Its normally placid bioluminescence was flickering violently, pulsing with stressed reds and oranges. It thrashed against the containment field, sending sprays of electrified water against the reinforced glass. The low thrum of failing dampeners vibrated through the floor. It's being directly affected by Zephyrion's larger etheric field, Vance explained, tapping frantically at a portable console. Like a small bell ringing out of sync with a distant, colossal gong. Its own internal etheric rhythm is being shattered. Kaelen, you ready? Finch's voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Remember Aris's first principle. Seek resonance, not opposition. Kaelen nodded, taking a deep breath. Vance handed him a pair of neural interface cuffs designed to help focus etheric projection and a small, precise frequency modulator. I'll be monitoring its vitals and etheric output from here, she said, her voice tight with anticipation. I'll guide you to the precise energetic nodes we need to target. They entered the observation booth, separated from the tank by another layer of reinforced glass. Kaelen closed his eyes, fitting the cuffs. He felt a faint hum as they activated, tuning his senses. He tried to clear his mind, to push away the ghosts of his past, the logical algorithms. He needed to feel. Focus on the primary neural cluster, Just behind the ocular cavity, Vance's voice echoed in his ear, precise and urgent. Its etheric signature is cycling too fast. We need to introduce a slower, harmonious frequency. Kaelen concentrated. He reached out, not with his hands, but with an unfamiliar, nascent sense. He pictured serpens minores, not as a monster, but as a living, breathing being. He tried to find its core, its emotional center. At first, he felt nothing but the ambient hum of the facility, the frantic thrum of the containment. Then, a faint whisper. A flicker of something cold, vast, and utterly alone. It was serpens minores' fear. It wasn't just physical pain. It was deep, existential terror, magnified by Zephyrian's overwhelming presence. The fear resonated with his own buried trauma, and for a moment, Kaelen was lost, reeling from the sheer emotional deluge. His hands trembled. Kaelen, stay with me. Finch's voice cut through the noise. Don't fight the emotion. Embrace it. Then offer solace. Show it peace. He took a shaky breath, forcing himself to ground. He let the brine serpent's fear wash over him, acknowledging it. Then he focused on a counter-emotion, calm. A deep, steady stillness. He channeled the ambient ether, shaping it with his intent, pushing the calming resonance towards the distressed creature. A faint glow emanated from Kaelen's hands, a soft, azure light. It pulsed in rhythm with his breath. On Vance's monitors, the brine serpent's erratic etheric signature began to stabilize, ever so slightly. It's working. Vance gasped, her eyes wide. Its neural pathways are responding. Keep going, Kaelen. He pushed harder, the effort draining. He felt the brine serpent's frantic energy pushing back against his calm, a powerful current fighting an incoming tide. He projected images of vast, tranquil oceans of soft, reassuring warmth. He felt the delicate tendrils of his own empathy reaching, intertwining with the kaiju's consciousness. It was like speaking a language he'd never known, yet inherently understood. Slowly, agonizingly, serpens minores' thrashing began to subside. Its bioluminescence shifted from angry red to a gentler, shimmering orange, then a muted gold. The low hum of the dampeners eased. The brine serpent uncoiled slightly, its large, luminous eyes, still wide with residual fear, fixated on the observation booth. Kaelen felt a profound connection, a shared moment of vulnerable peace. He had done it. Or almost. Just as he thought he had succeeded, as the creature seemed to settle completely, Kaelen felt a jarring, discordant note within its calm. A faint, almost imperceptible pulse. It wasn't fear nor pain, nor Zephyrian's distant roar. It was a cold, alien hum, a rhythmic interference that felt synthetic. It was deep within the brine serpent's very being, a subtle overlay on its natural etheric signature, almost like a whisper of control or manipulation. He gasped, pulling back sharply, the azure light flickering and dying. The connection shattered, leaving him disoriented and lightheaded. What is it, Kaelen? What did you feel? Vance demanded, noticing his sudden distress. A pulse, Kaelen stammered, rubbing his temples. Not natural. A frequency. Hidden. Like a phantom limb, but inside its core. Vance's fingers flew across her console. Her eyes widened, scanning the readouts. He's right, she breathed, her voice filled with dawning horror. There's an anomalous energy signature. It's faint, almost perfectly masked, but it's there. Not Zephyrian's ether, and not the brine serpent's natural output. It's artificial. Like a beacon. A subliminal signal. Finch, who had been observing silently, leaned forward, his expression grim. I feared as much. Aris always warned of those who sought to control kaiju ether, not understand it. To turn their very essence into a weapon. His gaze hardened, narrowing. This isn't just about calming a distressed creature, Kaelen. This brine serpent has been tampered with. It confirms my suspicions about Vane's clandestine projects. He isn't just trying to eradicate the kaiju, he's trying to bend them to his will. The room fell silent, save for the now gentle thrum of the containment field. The implications were chilling. If a small, docile brine serpent was being subtly manipulated, what was being done to the raging Alpha Titan, Zephyrion? Kaelen's nascent hope for coexistence fractured, replaced by a cold dread. The threat was far greater than a rampaging kaiju. It was a hidden, insidious war, waged against the Titans and, perhaps, against humanity itself. The echo of the Alpha's roar vibrated through the reinforced walls of the KDF's subterranean research annex, a visceral reminder of the escalating crisis. The tremor, a mere aftershock of its rage, sent shivers down Kaelen's spine. He stood hunched over a holodeble in Finch's cramped lab, the ethereal glow of the Alpha's projected etheric signature illuminating his drawn face. Beside him, Dr. Vance, usually a whirlwind of restless energy, was unusually subdued, her brow furrowed in intense concentration as she sifted through biological readouts. That anomaly, Kaelen murmured, tapping a finger on a particularly jagged spike in the Alpha's energy output. When we connected to that fragment, it wasn't just a surge of distress. There was something else, something unnatural. Vance nodded, her gaze fixed on a complex waveform. You're right. The etheric signature of the fragment itself was consistent with a nascent kaiju, a desperate attempt at self-preservation. But the underlying resonance, it's almost like a forced harmonic. Too clean, too precise for raw biological distress. It suggests external manipulation. Professor Finch, perched on a stool amidst a mountain of ancient scrolls and modern datapads, slowly stroked his wispy beard. Dr. Aris Granger theorized that etheric fields, while organic, could theoretically be tuned or amplified through focused energy. A concept so dangerous she sealed her research. To manipulate a kaiju's core resonance, it would require a mind devoid of empathy, utterly focused on power. A cold dread seeped into Kaelen. Director Vane. The name was a whisper, but it hung heavy in the air, weighted by suspicion and grim anticipation. Vance scoffed, pushing a strand of bright red hair from her face. Vane? He's a brute, a hammer. He only understands eliminate or contain. He wouldn't have the finesse for something like this, even if he had the knowledge. Perhaps not the finesse to create it, Kaelen countered, recalling Vane's obsession with kaiju eradication. But certainly the ambition to use it. And he has access to the most advanced research labs and energy manipulation tech. He was always pushing for ways to make our shields stronger, our deterrence more potent. What if he found a way to weaponize what we're trying to heal? He began cross-referencing recent major kaiju incidents with unusual energy spikes in the KDF's archived reports. The holodeble shimmered with data, Kaelen's fingers flying across the controls. Vance, intrigued despite her initial skepticism, began running parallel diagnostics, searching for commonalities in the forced harmonic signature. Hours blurred into an intense haze of data analysis, caffeine, and growing alarm. Kaelen's empathic sensitivity, once a source of fear, now hummed with an urgency that propelled him forward. He could feel the distorted etheric frequencies, like discordant notes in a symphony. Vance's biological expertise proved invaluable, identifying subtle physiological indicators that linked the anomalous energies to specific neural and glandular disruptions within kaiju. Look at this, Kaelen exclaimed, pointing to a series of archived reports detailing unusually aggressive behavior from a subdued oceanic kaiju, designated Leviathan 9, several months prior. This spike in etheric output, just before it breached its containment zone, it matches the artificial resonance we're seeing in the Alpha. It was classified as an unprovoked surge of aggression, but the patterns, they're identical to Vane's proposed etheric enhancer protocols I saw in a restricted white paper on kaiju containment during my technician days. Vance's eyes widened, scanning the data. The etheric enhancer? That was a hypothetical project aimed at increasing shield potency using kaiju energy. It was deemed too unstable, too unethical. It directly interferes with their core etheric regulators. It would be like force-feeding a heart stimulant to someone already in cardiac arrest. Her voice rose, laced with indignant fury. He's been experimenting. Not just on containment fields, but on the kaiju themselves. Finch pushed himself up, his usual academic calm replaced by a grave intensity. Director Vane has always walked a fine line between protection and control. Aris understood that true power lay in symbiosis, not subjugation. If he's using these enhancers to provoke kaiju, to amplify their destructive capabilities, then he's not seeking to eliminate threats, but to create them, or at least, to control their output for his own twisted ends. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Vane wasn't just fighting kaiju, he was deliberately manipulating them, perhaps even provoking them, to justify his eradication initiative, or worse, to harness their immense power for some unknown purpose. The Alpha's current rampage wasn't just raw distress, it was a screaming response to being tampered with, its natural etheric field forcibly distorted and weaponized. He could be amplifying kaiju signatures to test new weapons, or even using them as living batteries for some massive energy project, Kaelen hypothesized, his mind racing through the implications. The coastal research settlement, his home, destroyed by a seemingly unprovoked titan. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Was it unprovoked or provoked? The thought was a sickening punch to the gut. Vance slammed her fist onto the holodeble, the projected data shimmering wildly. This is an abomination. He's treating sentient beings like cannon fodder or lab rats. We have to expose him. And how do we do that, Alara? Finch asked, his voice low and steady. His project would be classified at the highest level. Any attempt to expose him without irrefutable proof, and we'd be branded as traitors, endangering Neo-Arcadia in its darkest hour. Proof. Kaelen's gaze hardened. The Alpha is the proof. It's agony, it's rage, it's not natural. If we can calm it, truly calm it, by countering Vane's manipulation, that will be our evidence. The gravity of their task intensified tenfold. They weren't just attempting to soothe a rampaging creature. They were trying to reverse a deliberate, heinous distortion of its very being, likely orchestrated by the very organization meant to protect humanity. So, the master spell, Vance said, her eyes blazing with renewed purpose. It's not just about calming the Alpha's distress. It's about cutting through Vane's noise. It needs to be a symbiotic counterfrequency of a reintegration spell. Kaelen nodded, closing his eyes, letting his empathic sense reach out towards the distant roar of the Alpha. He felt the raw, primal energy, but beneath it, the unnatural hum, a foreign body within its etheric core. It's like trying to heal a wound that's being constantly reopened. We need to shield it, then mend it from the inside out. Precisely, Finch affirmed, moving to a dusty console cluttered with ancient texts and anatomical diagrams of kaiju. Dr. Granger's most advanced theories spoke of etheric weaving, a highly complex form of symbiosis that could unravel and reweave a creature's etheric field at a submolecular level. It demands not just empathy, but absolute precision, a perfect understanding of their unique energetic blueprint. Their lab transformed into a pressure cooker of frantic research and intense collaboration. Kaelen, guided by Finch, delved into the intricacies of etheric weaving, learning to channel ambient ether not just as a blanket of calm, but as a precise surgical tool. He practiced modulating his own empathic output, focusing it like a laser, trying to mimic the specific frequencies needed to neutralize the artificial resonance. Vance, armed with her vast biological knowledge, isolated the specific neural pathways and pheromone glands that Vane's enhancers were exploiting. She painstakingly mapped the Alpha's unique physiological responses, determining the exact chemical and energetic signatures required to soothe its pain receptors and reestablish a natural hormonal balance. Finch, the quiet conductor, provided the theoretical framework, the lost equations, the ancient wisdom that bridged the gap between raw empathy and scientific application. He taught Kaelen to visualize the ambient ether not as an undifferentiated mist, but as an intricate tapestry of energies, each thread capable of being plucked, woven, and directed with intent. The core principle, Finch explained, tracing a complex glyph on a frosted pane of glass, is not force, but resonance. We must become the Alpha's natural frequency, amplify it, and overwrite the artificial dissonance. It requires total immersion, Kaelen. Your empathy must be its guide, your mind its anchor. Kaelen spent hours in deep meditation, pushing his mind to its limits. He learned to feel the Alpha's rage not as a threat, but as an agonizing scream, a physical wound etched into its etheric field. He envisioned the master spell as a complex dance, a symphony of gentle frequencies that would wrap around the Alpha, shielding it from Vane's manipulations, then gently coaxing its own etheric core back into harmony. The symbiotic reintegration weave, they named it, a blend of Finch's theoretical elegance, Vance's biological specificity, and Kaelen's raw empathic power. It was a spell unlike any other, designed not merely to calm, but to heal a deep, internal wound. Just as they finalized the last intricate calculations, a blaring alarm pierced the air. The holographic display of Neo Arcadia flickered red. Barrier integrity at critical levels, a synthetic voice blared over the comms. Alpha Kaiju's etheric signature reaching unprecedented peaks. Evacuation protocols initiated for outer sectors. Director Vane requesting immediate deployment of etheric deterrent weapons. Vance gasped, her face paling. Deterrent weapons? He's going to escalate. He's going to use his amplified kaiju energy against the Alpha, probably blaming its rage on its inherent malice. He'll destroy it, and use its death to prove his point. Kaelen felt a surge of cold fury. Vane wasn't just manipulating kaiju, he was using the city's fear and its imminent destruction to push his agenda. There's no more time, Kaelen said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The symbiotic reintegration weave is ready. We have to go. Now. Finch met Kaelen's gaze, a flicker of something akin to pride, but laced with profound concern in his eyes. Be careful, Kaelen. You are walking into the heart of a storm, confronting not just a monstrous beast, but the monstrous ambition of man. As they gathered their minimal equipment, the entire lab shuddered violently. Overhead, the comms crackled with panic. Alpha breach imminent. Shields failing. All KDF personnel to defensive positions. Kaelen looked at Vance, her face grim but resolute. Then, he looked at the projected image of Neo Arcadia, the Alpha's colossal shadow already looming over the city's outer defenses. He knew, with absolute certainty, that if they failed, not only would Neo Arcadia fall, but the very hope of coexistence, of understanding, would be extinguished forever. The true battle, the one that would decide the fate of both species, was about to begin. The ground trembled beneath Neo Arcadia, not with the familiar rumble of defense artillery, but with the earth-shattering impact of a kaiju in full, unbridled fury. Typhoeus, the Alpha Kaiju, was a monstrous tapestry of volcanic rock and shimmering crystal, its colossal form dwarfing the highest spires of the city. Etheric energy pulsed violently from its immense frame, a crimson haze that crackled with raw, destructive power, tearing through the city's outermost energy shields like wet paper. Skyscrapers groaned, then imploded, sending plumes of dust and debris into the already choked air. The air raid sirens, usually a shrill warning, now sounded like a death knell. Kaelen Thorne stood on an emergency landing platform, the wind whipping his hair, the roar of Typhoeus and agony in his chest that mirrored the ache of his own trauma. Beside him, Dr. Alara Vance adjusted her comms, her face grim but resolute. Professor Alistair Finch, leaning heavily on his cane, watched the unfolding chaos with a haunted look in his eyes, but his gaze occasionally flickered to Kaelen, a spark of cautious hope within their depths. He's bypassing all known containment protocols, Vance reported, her voice tight. The etheric resonance is off the charts. It's almost screaming. Kaelen felt it, not just heard it. The empathic surge was a tidal wave, crashing through his defenses. Pain, pure and unadulterated, pulsed from the Alpha, a symphony of suffering and rage amplified by the very weaponry designed to repel it. Vane's experiments, Kaelen knew, hadn't just angered Typhoeus, they had broken it. Below them, on a lower command platform, Director Richter Vane barked orders into a comm unit, his face a mask of furious desperation. Focus all available heavy artillery on its primary nexus points. Overload its etheric receptors. We can still force it back. Kaelen couldn't hold back. He knew Vane's strategy was not only futile, but actively exacerbating the crisis. He sprinted down the ramp, Vance and Finch following close behind. Director Vane. Kaelen's voice, though amplified by the comms, was almost lost in the din Vane spun, his eyes narrowing to slits as he recognized Kaelen. Thorne? What in the blazes are you doing here? This is a command zone, not a laboratory. Get back to your post, technician. Vane snarled, his face contorted with stress and fury. Your nexus point targeting is failing, Director, Kaelen retorted, standing firm despite the towering figure of Typhoeus looming in the background, unleashing another wave of destructive force. Every blast, every energy surge you throw at it is only fueling its rage. It's screaming, Director, not attacking without cause. Your eradication initiative has pushed it past its breaking point. Vane scoffed. Breaking point? It's a monster, Thorne. A force of nature bent on our destruction. Your sentimental delusions are a luxury we can't afford. This is a war and we will win it with force if necessary. Force is what led us here. Vance interjected, stepping up beside Kaelen, her own fiery temper igniting. Your weaponization of stolen kaiju ether, your rogue experiments, they didn't just enhance our defenses, Director, they provoked this. Typhoeus isn't attacking, it's lashing out in pain. A muscle twitched in Vane's jaw. His eyes, cold and sharp, flicked between Kaelen and Vance. Insubordination. You both will be court-martialed for this. Guards, apprehend these two immediately. But before the armed guards could move, Professor Finch stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos with surprising authority. Stand down, soldiers. The Director's current methods are proving ineffective. Let's see if there is another way. His presence, his legendary status, gave the guards pause. Another way? Vane laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. There is no another way with these creatures, Finch. Only brute force or annihilation. Humanity's survival depends on it. No, Kaelen said, his voice quiet but resonant with newfound conviction. Humanity's survival depends on understanding. On symbiosis. I'm going in. Vane stared, aghast. You're suicidal. That thing will vaporize you before you get within a click. Kaelen ignored him. He looked at Vance, who gave him a determined nod, a small, encouraging smile. You know the sequence, Kaelen. I'll maintain the etheric dampeners from here. Try to buy you what little time we have. And I, Finch added, his hand resting on Kaelen's shoulder, will ensure no one interferes. Go, Kaelen. Trust your connection. Trust your heart. With a deep breath, Kaelen moved. He grabbed a modified drone equipped with a localized etheric resonator, a key component of their master calming spell, and leapt onto a hovering transport platform. The platform ascended, carrying him directly towards the monstrous Alpha. As he neared Typhoeus, the sheer scale of the kaiju overwhelmed him. Its roar was a physical force, rattling his bones, and the raw etheric energy radiating from it threatened to tear him apart. He felt the pain again, magnified, searing, laced with an ancient despair. This wasn't just rage, it was the agony of a creature witnessing its home, its very existence, being defiled. He closed his eyes, centering himself. The logical part of his mind, honed by years of technical precision, wanted to analyze, to categorize, to distance. But the other part, the nascent empath, surged forward, embracing the chaotic torrent of emotion. He let it wash over him, becoming one with Typhoeus' sorrow, its fear, its desperate need for cessation. It's okay, Kaelen whispered, projecting his thoughts, his emotions, through the nascent bond. I understand. I hear you. He activated the drone, its resonator humming to life, emitting a precisely calibrated etheric frequency. A complex symphony of soothing wavelengths designed by Vance to bypass the Alpha's inflamed neural pathways and directly address its core biological processes. The device, pulsing with a soft blue glow, began to broadcast their painstakingly crafted Aetherial Symbiosis spell. Kaelen extended his hand, not towards the kaiju's flesh, but towards the swirling tempest of its etheric field. He reached deep within himself, drawing upon the ambient ether, guiding it, shaping it. This wasn't brute force, it was delicate, intricate energy work. He visualized the spell, a network of shimmering threads weaving into Typhoeus' chaotic field, bypassing the overstimulated pain receptors, targeting the deep-seated emotional core. The initial response was violent. Typhoeus recoiled, its vast head snapping towards Kaelen, a low growl reverberating through the air. A wave of concussive force erupted, threatening to send Kaelen's platform tumbling. But he held firm, his eyes locked on the immense creature. He pushed harder, pouring his own empathy, his shared trauma, into the connection. "I know what it's like to lose everything," he projected, a raw, honest whisper of his soul. "To be attacked unprovoked. To watch your home burn." A flicker. A hesitation in Typhoeus's movements. The crimson aura around it wavered, momentarily replaced by faint streaks of violet, the healing signature of the spell taking hold. Kaelen felt the subtle shift in the Kaiju's etheric signature, the chaotic frequencies beginning to normalize. He channeled the specific molecular patterns Vance had identified, focusing on the Kaiju's massive pheromone glands, coaxing them to release calming compounds. He targeted its sensory organs, softening the overwhelming input of the city's defenses, muting the piercing agony of the explosions. He closed his eyes again, letting his entire being become a conduit. The city's sporadic artillery fire, even at a reduced rate, still stung Typhoeus. Kaelen broadcasted a plea to Vane. "Stop. You're hurting it. You're hurting us all." Below, Vane watched, his mouth agape. The anti-kaiju weaponry, for the first time, seemed to pause. The city was still, holding its breath. Kaelen's blue drone continued its steady pulse. Typhoeus, which had been thrashing moments ago, slowly, agonizingly, began to calm. Its volcanic skin, still glowing with heat, began to dim. The enraged roar softened into a guttural rumble, a sound of profound exhaustion. Its massive head, once held high in defiance, slowly lowered, until it rested upon the broken wreckage of a defense shield, its eye, a vast, obsidian orb, focusing on Kaelen. In that obsidian eye, Kaelen saw not malice, but weary intelligence, a profound ancientness, and a deep, deep sorrow. "It's working," Vance's voice crackled over his calms, laced with awe and relief. "Its etheric field is stabilizing. It's calming." The massive kaiju let out a soft sigh, a sound like a distant thunderstorm, and its entire body seemed to relax. The immediate threat, the terrifying rampage, had ceased. Neo Arcadia, battered and bruised, was safe. For now, Kaelen, drained but exhilarated, slowly descended. The crowd that had gathered on the lower platforms, including Vane's bewildered soldiers, watched him with a mixture of fear and reverence. Vane stood motionless, his face pale with disbelief and barely suppressed rage. It stopped, he mumbled, as if unable to process what he had witnessed. Professor Finch, his eyes alight with a satisfaction that transcended decades of disappointment, walked towards Kaelen. "You did it, Kaelen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You truly did it." Dr. Vance rushed forward, pulling Kaelen into a fierce, spontaneous hug. "You absolute madman, you actually did it. We have to analyze every microfluctuation of that energy signature. This changes everything." Kaelen looked up at Typhoeus, still resting against the ruined cityscape, its breath misting in the cool air. The beast was calm, but the scars on the city were stark, a reminder of the fragile peace he had brokered. This wasn't victory in the traditional sense, but a beginning. A desperate, hopeful, utterly unprecedented beginning. He turned to Vane, who was now being questioned by his stunned subordinates. The director shot Kaelen a look of pure loathing, a promise of future conflict. Kaelen knew his path wouldn't be easy. The war with Kaiju had ended, but a new struggle had just begun, the fight for coexistence against the ingrained prejudice and fear of humanity. But for the first time in his life, Kaelen Thorne didn't feel alone. He felt connected. To the weary titan, to the hopeful scientists, and to the silent, watching world. The era of Aetherial Symbiosis had just truly begun. And the questions Typhoeus's calmed presence raised, about its true nature, about the deep ocean rifts it emerged from, about the possibility of communication, suddenly felt far more urgent and infinitely more profound than any weapon could ever answer.